So tell us a little bit about yourselves and how you met and what you guys are doing right now.
Cool. Well, my name is Brandi MacDonald.
I'm Dr. Don MacDonald.
And we've been together for 18 and a half years. We've been married for 16 years. And we met socially, but I was not involved at all at that time in the career we're in today. Don is a chiropractor, and he was in his first week in practice, and we met in a social situation. And he came up to me with a business card and told me he was a chiropractor, and I rolled my eyes and said, "Oh my God, well, I don't even think I'm a real doctor, is it?" That's the love was born.
Love at first sight.
Yeah, it really turned out that way.
But she gave me your number, so I thought that was pretty good. So that was
sounds like it worked then.
Yeah. In retrospect, it worked, and in the moment, it probably didn't seem so hot. At that point in time, we would start dating, and it would take me about 7 years. I was a social worker. I would go on and leave my profession and actually start working in the chiropractic office. So about 7 years into our relationship, we had been married for approximately 5. I had always been sort of satellite involved in the office in the sense that I would go to all the seminars with him and his partner, and I would do, because I was in leadership, so my specialty was strategic planning and staffing and team stuff and leadership coaching. And so weekends we would meet, and I would work as if I was in the office, but I was never in the office. And
how she really did it was I would ask her, because I'm not a very good implementer, and so she's a very good implementer, and so I always knew that if I could get her skills in my practice, it would make a difference. So she would come, and I'd ask her to come to do our staff meetings, and she'd do our staff meetings, and then she'd have her computer and make a to-do list, and like every single time we came to the next meeting, we didn't do anything.
Yeah.
Wow.
Frustrating for her.
Yeah. For 5 years. I'm like, why the practice isn't growing and it's not changing, and we spent all this money on seminars. And so, I guess I was always a little bit involved until Don said, just come in for 3 months. And I was transitioning out of my career anyways. And so he said, come in for 3 months, and we'll just try and make a go of it and see how it works. Just help me out. I need some help. And then that was 12 years ago, 13 years ago.
Wow.
So I never left. And so from there we've been in 3 practices. And so our full-time gig obviously is we run a full-time chiropractic office together. Don is the primary chiropractor. I am the business manager. We run a seminar series for chiropractors called True Concept Seminars. We run an immersion day called the Vitality Shift Immersion Day, which is really a down and dirty sort of role playing, helping chiropractors communicate this thing called life and vitality to the general public. So we run that together. We have an online program called the Vitality Shift. We have a podcast. Don has a podcast called Breaking the Underdog Curse together.
I just wrote a book a year ago called just the Underdog Curse.
Just the Underdog Curse. Yeah. What else do we do? We coach, but we coach sort of independently, and periodically we co-coach, particularly when it comes to our online program called the Vitality Shift.
And then Brandi speaks. She's spoken in like 10 countries in the last 10 years.
And he's my talent manager. So pretty much everything we do it together now today. And so it's pretty much our life, and it's we do it all together.
Yeah.
I think that's actually how you, Brandi, crossed our path, was at Focus 2 years ago.
2 years.
And we found you on Facebook and have followed you ever since, and then kind of got to know Don a little bit just kind of through that.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So
she's usually the more vocal one. I'm the more quiet one.
I know where we're at.
Yeah, totally.
I have
on social media. He's actually the social butterfly in the relationship, which a lot of people are surprised by. So he's actually really quite social.
Yeah.
But when it comes to speaking or social media or leadership, I tend to be the more vocal one.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
That sounds a lot like us. I feel like out in the public's eye when it comes to just talking or giving a presentation or whatever, that's me. But then we can't go anywhere without stopping and him like seeing somebody he knows or just chatting with a random person in line for an hour.
Do you elbow him when he's supposed to stop talking? Like,
yeah.
Now she just walks off and leaves me now.
That's actually pretty good.
No, you let me know when you're done.
Yeah.
I'll turn around and she's just gone. I'm like, oh, I got to go. So when you guys started, now I know it sounds like, I mean, obviously Don had the business going before, and then you kind of came in later. Did you guys sit down and figure out some overall goals and line out kind of how you wanted the business structured?
Well, I would say we did that really the first 5 years. We didn't really have as far as business is concerned, we didn't really have a magical story. It was actually really tough for us in chiropractic, and we had those first 7 years of practice. Before I went into the practice, this practice was having a really hard time, and I think that was some of our frustration, because we would set every month we would set those goals, and so we had this big strategic plan and marketing, and we go to seminars and we had coaches, and I would do all this stuff satellite, and it was really disappointing for me to watch him in particular go to practice every day and really not enjoy it. And every year it sort of plateaued. It never really got any better. And we sort of stayed in that kind of model for about 7 years. And so we tried to outline all of that stuff in that period of time. And it was funny, we really didn't understand at that time why it wasn't getting better. Things weren't getting better for us in the business. And we were heavily in debt. Don graduated from Palmer, which was in the United States. We live in Canada at the time when the Canadian dollar was 60 cents on the dollar. So you take your student loans and you almost double them.
Yeah, almost 40%.
And so then we had a business loan. And so my full-time job was supporting us. And trust me, I was not making a lot of money. And so, because all his money was going just towards debt repayment. And so really we stayed in that model for 7 years. And some of the strategies did work. Where our money went, how much went to debt repayment. Once we got married, we didn't buy a house. We rented for 2 years. I mean, we did all of this stuff because really we had to bring our debt down before we could start making any sort of big plans for anything else. And it was a matter then of, well, how do we start to grow the practice or the business? That's when I went in, and we, I don't think the strategy really changed that much. I think the confidence, what happened for us, especially for Don, you can speak to the confidence for him having me in the practice increased, I guess.
I just think my general skills, I'm more of a people pleaser. More of an amiable personality, and I had a hard time when I was first in practice. I would hire people that were just like me because I liked them, because that was my only gauge on how to hire somebody.
Yeah.
Because I grew up in a family where we had a small business, so we worked. I worked since I was I think 8 years old. My parents had a fast food restaurant, and I was wrapping the cutlery with the napkin, and I got paid 50 cents an hour. And so then they had a bottle depot, and then they had an ice business and a bunch of stuff. So I always just worked for my dad. Mm-hmm. And then we never had staff. Well, they had staff in the restaurant, but I never had to hire them. And so when I was first in practice, I just would pick who was like me. But the challenge was we loved doing the same things, and then we hated doing the same things. And so that's why nothing ever got done. And so, and then it just was hard to train. When I was trying to train staff, we were very not very clear on the direction. So nothing was really getting done the way that I wanted to get it done. And so I was always, when I was working on patients, I'd always be with my ear to the front, and it was distracting and it was exhausting.
So I think the strategy, what we really sat down, as we said at that time in the business, what was the only thing that we couldn't pay somebody in the practice that Don didn't have to do, right? Don was the only person who could check and adjust somebody as a chiropractor. Everything else in a small business can be done by somebody else. But we were the typical solopreneurs where they were doing, and the business owners were doing, it was in partnership, the business owners were doing everything. The staff were doing very little. I'm sorry about the dog. I have no children, that's our one child, and he, of course, only barks when we're on a podcast. Yeah. So it was, I think for him, the strategy actually on all those 5 years, we had all the how do we market, and how do we build the practice, and what do we do for the business model and paying off debt, and then it was, what do we take away from the partners, the business owners, and what do we put onto somebody that we could hire and pay less, and actually then that started to free up their time. And so that was actually, in that period of time, it was all about what it would free up for them or what they could shed versus what we could add to the business. And that was really the strategy.
Just got rid of distractions so I could just focus on doing what I was good at.
Yeah. Okay. That's important.
So now, how do you guys, especially with all the projects that you have and different parts of your business, how do you establish your 30-day goals, 90-day goals? Is that something that you guys do? How do you figure out, okay, this is something that needs to be done by here? How do you set those and kind of establish that?
You know what's funny? So I know the answer. I know what the answer people want the answer to be, but I'm going to tell you the answer. We do not do that. So
Good.
We did that for a long time. Early on, that's what we did. We did like, okay, 6-month goals, 1-year goals, 2-year goals, like, and we felt like if we didn't have goals, then we had no direction.
Mm-hmm.
But for us, we got to a point in our business where it became a machine, and that machine produced enough results financially that it was not so desperate for us to have a 30-day goal or a 60-day goal or even a year goal. Today we live by a vision and a code, and underneath that vision and code that we live by, these projects just roll out naturally. Yes, they get done in a timeline. For example, we produced an online program that was a 30 video program, and that was not a machine because it was the first time we had done it. And so, I'm the talent and Don is the worker bee, particularly as it relates to sort of podcasts and books and online programs. And so he really every night would carve out so much time where he would be producing the programs online. You guys will find the same thing with the podcast, right?
Yeah.
When you first start to do it, you got to sort of carve out your times when you're doing it away from the business is producing the results, because it tends to be labor of love. And that was a bit how the online program was for us. And then, but we knew we wanted to launch by a certain date. So that meant obviously we did have a deadline of things that we needed to get done. Sure. So it's more project orientated today, which is really probably not the answer that people want, but it's no longer, we used to live by these end outcomes, and they actually were really stressful, because what we realized in a business, you have no control over the end outcomes. So if you're running a business and you're trying to only focus on an end outcome and you don't hit it, you actually start to get frustrated. And we did that for those 7 years, instead of realizing the only actually outcome that you actually have control over is your input into the outcome. So we actually look at how much we have input in. So our goals around what's our input in, like what do we need to do today to get to the outcome, say if the deadline is here. So we're no longer as focused on those output goals as we used to be. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
it does.
absolutely.
It's funny how, like you said, people want those like clear, here's how we set goals and stuff. And as we've started this and working through it, you buy every planner you find has all these like goals, like, okay, what's your 30-day goals? What's your 90 goals? Yeah. And as we're like starting the kind of this new project of getting to know other couples who are in business, we're finding out more and more that those people don't live by those rules. And it's they've kind of developed their own way of determining it, kind of like what you just how you guys explained that.
Yeah.
Well, and I think because we've been in practice for so long and we're quite established, that we're no longer doing things because we have to. So we don't really have like, we need to hit this financial goal because like all the debt's paid off, all that stuff off. So the nice thing is that if you stay disciplined in the beginning part of your career, then as you get into the middle part, I'll say middle, not the end, because we get into the middle part of our career, it can be more vision based. So we already have a really super good foundation, and so we just keep that rolling, and then we just like do, hey, we'll add this and then add this and then do this, and then we do have deadlines, right? So we have seminars, so we have the date that the seminar has to be done, and we have to be organized for that. But it's funny because when you do something, just like when I wrote my book, once the book went out and then I wanted to promote it and I was trying to promote it to the world, then I had to narrow it back down because it was just too general. Like, so you don't even know what the issues you're going to have or what the opportunities you're going to have until you actually do it. So it's nice just to be project based, because once that project's done, it opens a new possibility that you never even saw before it was done.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
So how do you guys get together and plan your days and weeks out, like your actual week? Because like for us, it's always a challenge of, usually it's me that I forget that I have like a meeting, or I forget that I have something that I'm supposed to do, and she knows, but then sometimes it doesn't get communicated. And so it's been a challenge for us just figuring out how to plan our days and weeks out and months out. So how do you guys, and especially you guys travel way more than we do, and so have a lot more stuff to schedule?
Well, again, early on, it was different. Early on, when we first started negotiating and navigating as I started to step away from the practice and travel more and do more outside the practice, which was about 10 years ago, we had to learn, because in the beginning, I was the same way. I would organize all this. The family schedule was my responsibility. And so I know this often happens in marriages, especially if you have kids and you're managing the business and your partners, and
we have a dog.
Yeah, we have 2 dogs.
So I've got to find the dog sitter, right, and all that kind of stuff. And so, so early on, I would manage all of those things, and it was all constantly my frustration. And just like you were saying, that Eric has to manage it. He wouldn't remember the meetings. He wouldn't have it in his book. I'd be like, the girls booked that meeting like a month ago, and so, anyways, it was always that going back and forth. And so, really, I would say I manage it differently than he does. We, every day in the morning, have a ritual. And so our ritual is, well, we love coffee. We're currently off coffee, but like in a month, I'm sure when this podcast comes back out, I will be back on coffee, but we're small detox. And so we have tea in the morning, and every morning we have a ritual of, and it's probably about an hour and a half, get it very early. Yeah. We just have coffee or tea together, and we go, okay, what's on the agenda today? So he looks at his phone. I like a day timer, right? And we go, okay, what's the day look like? What's the week look like? Okay, when are you leaving? What's your flight? Like, sort of, so we kind of pre-plan it in advance. We do that every single day. Every morning, it's actually our ritual when we get up. And so that we kind of know exactly what's going on in the day, particularly because some days we're in totally different places and we might not even see each other until 7 o'clock that night, or I'm leaving and I won't see him for 3 or 4 days. And so, I want to go over like, the dog sitter's coming here, the practice is here, what's going on, so we do that actually on a daily basis versus a weekly. And then every 6 months, as far as the business is concerned, the practice is concerned, we have planning meetings with our teams. We plan that 6 months out. And then every, I would say 3 to 4 months, we try to get away for a weekend. And we just go, if we're thinking about a new project or the things we want to implement, we want to carve time to do that. And we all usually want to do that away from just our daily lives because we're more creative. So we do that every 3 or 4 months. And we just go away for a weekend, and usually that's project orientated. We want to plan what it's going to look like, how we're going to do it, that kind of thing.
Do you guys have an agenda for the trip set up before you go? No.
No. And it doesn't take the whole weekend either. The only thing we want was like, we're like 4 out. Like we literally we have pretty good boundaries now after being together for so long, because really I have no boundaries. So work just is everything. Like you talk about it all the time. You talk about it at dinner. You talk about it on the weekends. You go for it's all, and it's sort of a natural evolution, I think, in the beginning, especially when you're building a business.
Because it needs that much effort.
Because it needs that. Yeah, you need that much effort. The problem is if you're not careful, it starts to become your pattern in your relationship. And so we're really careful if we do something like that. There's days and times we are not going to be talking about business.
And I've got in trouble many times because it's like, nope, not talking about that today.
Right? Because he's a visionary. So he's the idea guy. So it'll be Saturday night at 7 o'clock, right? Having a glass of wine.
Oh, my word, yeah.
I'm like,
you can't turn it off.
You can't, right? He can't turn it off. No, he can't either.
And if you're relaxing, it actually turns on more. So if I'm like chilling out, my brain actually even works better. So I'm like, if I have no ideas, that means that I'm stressed out or it's not good.
Totally.
That's totally him too.
So it's about entertaining that to some degree, but then also having, he's just really talking about it. And early on, I received that as, oh my God, it's another thing we're going to do. And so we've now learned that lots of this stuff, he's just talking about it. And we were never going to do it. It's just, we're just talking about it.
Throw it against the wall, see if it sticks. If not, who cares? We'll do the next one.
That's right.
Yes, absolutely. Well, so what do each of you find are your strengths? Like individually, what do you bring, kind of to the table, both in life and business,
Well, I guess one of the things we found out was doing personality styles, right? And when we found out that we're totally the different end opposite of the spectrum of personality styles, we knew how to delegate that stuff a little bit better. So I'm kind of, like I said, I'm more the idea guy. I can do the behind the scenes stuff, and Brandy's going to do more of the talent stuff. Yeah. I guess we'd say it that way. So it kind of depends on where we are, because when we're in the office, I'm sort of the talent, and Brandy's running all the behind the scenes stuff. And then when we're on the road or doing any of the other stuff with our seminars, then she's the talent, and then I'm behind the scenes. So we kind of like flip that back and forth.
Yeah.
So I think she's the other thing is that our weaknesses were totally different, right? So mine would be in a relationship was I was not very direct or not tell her what was on my mind. And she would tell me everything on her mind and totally hurt my feelings.
I love it.
All the time. And so I think part of the marriage is over time, you just learn to come a little bit more closer together. So I work at being a little bit more direct and not getting my feelings hurt so much. And then Brandy's like a little bit more a little softer on some of the things. And and then we kind of, I think we that's how we work it out.
Well, we had to learn that early on, though, because we didn't realize we're polar opposite personalities. No, so I mean, our that's the strength of having us both in the business because we're so different.
Yeah.
But I think for us over the years, we've been asked a lot about working together and being married, and a lot of the challenges that have come up with people that we know that in the business have really nothing to do with the business. It's in the marriage. And then you take it to the business and it illuminates it. It puts it on steroids.
Yeah.
And so if there's a huge polar opposite, so either way you view the world or way you communicate or your personalities or things that you don't talk about at home, it's just illuminated once you go to the business. And so I often look at that as it's never really the problem being in business together. It's really the problem with how strong the foundation is in the relationship. And that took us a long time to learn how to not be so far apart from one another, which is also then the strength of our business because we're so totally different.
Yeah, very good. So how do you decide who does the hard tasks or the tasks that nobody wants to do, whether it's at home or on the road or writing emails or making phone calls to someone that you don't want to?
Well, it depends. He doesn't like putting out the garbage. I don't mind doing that.
Oh, he does put out the garbage, right?
Good.
Our love language is acts of service, so he puts out the garbage.
We should probably talk about that too. Is that the love languages book? That the 5 love languages?
Yes,
that's I think a must.
Yeah.
Okay.
Have you read it?
No, I hear about it all the time.
You definitely, and any couples that are missing, first of all, it's just for relationships, but it's really, Coach gave us that like 12 years ago. Yeah. And that was, other than us learning that we had different personality types, realizing we also had counter opposite love languages. So the way that we communicated love was in the way we wanted it, not in the way somebody else needed it. And understanding that was really, really important. So it means that I love gifts and I love acts of service. And Don loves, words of affirmation and quality time. So I don't necessarily want to spend every waking moment with him. Shocking but true.
Well, I don't know what's the big deal.
And so, but now that we know that we each need that, I don't know that there's as much of like, oh, I got to do that, because you start to recognize that somebody needs something different than what you need. And so we don't really have a lot of that anymore. Where early on we did, before we understood it, we're like, oh God, I do not want to do that. And most we do, to tell you the truth, when you run the businesses that you love and not something you feel like you should be doing, I know this sounds contrived, but I can only say this because we struggled for so long. There's not a lot anymore in our life that we dread doing. Everything has a reason. Everything that we do is linked to something bigger than why we're currently doing it.
And we've gotten rid of anything that we're dreading.
Yeah.
That's another thing. Or people that you hang out with or anything like that. We've designed it so it's pretty smooth. But I will say though, at the very beginning, for me to realize putting out the garbage was saying I love you. Really didn't make sense to me at all, and I had to force myself to do it. And I think part of it is just the willingness in a marriage to step into their world and understand what's important to them, and then actually make the effort.
Yeah,
I think that's the whole thing, because in the past I was just spending lots of time with her and saying she's awesome all the time and thinking that she'd be great, and she's like, "Would you just give me a gift or something around the house?" And I'm like,
"Go do the dishes for Pete's sake."
I love the dishwasher.
And then if she did something,
I don't need to hear how good I am. I just want the dishwasher.
And if she did something for me or bought me something, I like, that's great, but I don't really care.
Yes.
You can see how we'd be like two ships passing in the night, like communicating.
Yeah.
So that was a huge thing for us.
Cool.
I like how you tied that in with the relationship being strong and figuring out your relationship first. And then when you're in the business, it's like puts a spotlight on all of that. So if you get those things worked out first, then when you get into the office, then it's complete. And also the beauty of having your own business is getting rid of the stuff that you don't like to do.
Totally. So, right? That's the beauty of it. We're not employees, and so we really can do that. Yeah.
So how do you guys use what kind of strategies do you use? We kind of touched on a little bit with the weekends getting away and having time away from the business and that kind of stuff. But can you talk a little bit about how you decide how to manage your time and how to decide when is work time, when is personal time, and all that kind of stuff?
We just picked Sundays.
We picked Sundays. Well, we picked Saturday nights and Sundays because of our work schedule. When I'm often traveling on the weekend speaking, or if I'm here, we're in practice together on Saturdays. And so we're working on the weekends anyways, and we both coach on Fridays and Mondays. So we picked every Saturday night for 15 years is our date night, and it's Thursday night if I travel. So we go out every Saturday night. And plus it's our cheat night. So we're pretty it's our cheat night, so we're excited. So Saturday night and all day Sunday is nothing work related when I'm home. And so those are the times that we pick, because throughout the rest of the week, most of the time, it is fairly work orientated or business orientated. We're doing usually something related to one of the businesses. And so those are the times that are sort of off limits. And those are the times where it's just about us or the dog or the family or whatever. It has nothing to do with the business, and it's off limits. I don't turn my computer on. I check my emails, but I don't respond to my emails, right? Technically you could work all the time. You can work all the time, 24/7, especially in the world where when we're outside the practice, most of our stuff is online. So you could be working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week with your phone. Yeah. So really careful that we don't do that. And those are the times we just say, no, it's nothing to do with business.
And I break the rule lots because it's hard to turn it off.
Yeah, you're pretty good now, though.
I'm better. I think it's just at the beginning, because I think we only made that rule like a couple of years ago.
Probably 5 years ago, yeah.
Yeah, just a few years ago we made that rule. So just when we first made that rule, that was the hardest.
Yeah.
Do you still carry? Do you carry like a notepad around so you can write your ideas down and talk about them later?
That's funny.
No, but I'll quickly, if it's a really good one, I'll go find some place to write it down. I'll pretend I'm going to the bathroom and write it down so that it's just not working.
I'll put it on his notes in his phone.
Yeah.
We'll be away, and he'll be like, "This," and I'm often like, "That's a really good idea. We're not talking about it right now, so put it in your phone, and we'll talk about it." Put it in his phone. The book was born that way. My upcoming book was born that way. Like just by being away and just putting it in the phone, and then later talking about it. So
fun. So can you give maybe an example of, we have written down when you've had a crisis at home and how it affected business and vice versa, crisis. Some people with kiddos, that could be a kid's sick and what am I going to do at work today, or doggy gets hurt and needed surgery, and how did that affect business? Yes.
That was the big one, I think, was
recently
that Lux had knee surgery really quick, because we torn his ACL, and we went in to talk to a surgeon, and he said, yeah, he has this torn ACL, and he said your two options are, so we brought him in on a Friday because that's our day off. He said, I can see him tomorrow, or else then we have to wait for 8 weeks. So we're like, okay, so we'll go tomorrow. And then we have 2 weeks of having to carry him upstairs, carry him downstairs, and he can't look after himself and can't go to the bathroom hardly. And yeah, that was we just had to basically do what we could to get through that. That's
well, I think, it's not as significant as having kids, but I know that some of the young people we work with children, it's the same dynamic. We've built a team around us who support us. And so the way that one of our top values is freedom. And so as we built the practice, or continue to build a practice, we wanted enough people around us early on, like those times, that 7 years when I first went in, we said, well, what do we need to do to make sure that people can take on other stuff? So that Don goes into the practice and it still has to adjust people, obviously, but the dog surgery did not impact that. But we still needed help with other things. And so I think that's also what we did, is we built this team around us and friends around us who help us. So if something were to happen, other than adjusting people, which is why we have another doc in the office, like that would be a locum doc available. That would be, we have everybody else around us so that they can help us. And I mean, we don't have time for the whole story, but in Don's book, The Underdog Curse, we wrote about our family crisis where we split that partnership. It was his sister, and it blew up, and the family blew up, and it was everything awful that you can imagine. And we started all over again 8.5 years ago in a new practice. And so despite having to start all over again, it was also the entire family dynamic. And that crisis, went on for probably 3 or 4 years. And, in that period of time, there's nothing really that you can do when it's a personal crisis. You sort of have to get through it. I think the key is how you get through it, not that it doesn't happen. So like it does all consume you. It's what you talk about. It's what happens. It's in your face all the time. It happened to be enmeshed in our business. And so it was all consuming for probably 2 years, went on for probably 4. And the key really, I guess, for us was how we got out of it, not that it continued to really alter our relationship, our business, and, we would go on and thrive past that. But in that time, if you know that that's going on for you, there is a period of time. It's just like if you've ever been, I know this isn't for all chiropractors, but anybody you've seen that's sort of been chronically ill or acutely hurt, there's a period of time that's all consuming. Yeah. And that's part of the healing process. Yeah. Is how much attention you put there actually helps heal. But what actually, contaminates it down the road is if you stay there. And so for us, it was all consuming. We just didn't stay there. And so there's not really a good way to say that there's a way to just, block it off and go to work and pretend it's not happening when it's a personal crisis or a business crisis, because it is all consuming. You don't want to stay there for the next 10 years.
But I think you too, in a relationship, you have to be willing to have the tough conversations, because when you're going through a challenge, then I'm like in that challenge, I was in a severe stress response. And so when you're working with a stress response, I'm working with my reptilian brain, not my prefrontal cortex. And so you're going to be more reactive and say things that you might not mean. And so you have to be able to sit down and go through the pain and talk together as a couple and have a safe environment where you can kind of work things out, just to kind of.
Yeah, I think back to my comment from before about the strength of your relationship, because if you have a business crisis or a personal crisis and your intimate relationship is not stable, that should be your safe place to fall. And if that is not your safe place to fall, it makes it worse. It's tough to get through anything like that on your own. And so that makes it even more complicated if the intimate relationship is not a stable, strong foundation. And so I think that's really the key, because, you'll withstand anything. Life is about withstanding things and becoming resilient and adaptable to what happens to us. And it's just, the more resilient you can be in your relationship, I think it's easier when something happens in business or even in your personal life.
Yeah. I like that.
I like how every time we do like interviews, like it seems like there's always like one theme that kind of comes out, and everybody's different. It's always like one theme that always seems to really kind of come out that you have no idea when you start that everything's going to kind of fall back on.
I see that too with interviews always.
That's awesome.
Cool.
Yeah. So do you guys, we mentioned earlier about your kind of morning routines. Do you guys have any favorite quotes, any affirmations? Do you have any of those things that you read every morning, that you say every morning, anything like that?
Nope.
You I can't. Before, when you, like for like a long time ago. Yeah,
again, early on, yes.
Okay.
So there's like
it's like for beginners. 100%.
Here's where the only way I can describe it is this: there's a mechanical, I guess, evolution of growth, and part of that mechanical evolution is early on is goals and affirmations and mindset, because what you're trying to do is you're trying to, from the outside, put things into the inside.
It's what do I do?
It's the easiest way to get some results. Eventually, over a period of time, for us and me in particular, mastery has really come from the inside, not from the outside. And the work that I've done that has been transformational has not been from an affirmation or from a goal or from a quote. It's really been from a shedding process of having a consciousness about who I am, how I'm living my life, observing my life, observing who I am, and whether that is what my consciousness and my soul and whatever you want to call it was really meant to be. And when you start to shed off all those layers, you get closer to that. And so we don't do anything like that anymore.
It's more like a gut check.
It's
like
it's really checking in with the intuition.
How's it feeling? Because you only get that weird feeling when you're off track, right?
Yeah.
I think at the very beginning, I was so off track, like it didn't matter. I was doing affirmations because you're doing anything to make yourself feel like you're on track, because you don't even know what on track is when you're starting. You're just like, everything is stressful and crazy. And now I've got a taste of when things are on track. Now I'm like, okay, does that feel like that, or am I?
Yeah.
And most of it's going to be self-care too. Yeah. So when I'm off track, then am I short of sleep? Did I skip the gym a few times? Am I eating a few too many O. Henry bars or eating some bad foods, or like, those are the things that will get us back onto track again.
So I would say we're more intuitive checkers than we are anything else. So but we each individually do that versus for one another. I guess early on we would do it more for one another as we're trying to create some awareness. And then of course we do external things to keep us vital. I mean, we are obviously vigilant about our health routines and our health behaviors. But those are all secondary, because you'll see this every day, people doing all the right things and they're still sick. Well, how does that happen? That's all external stuff that doesn't come deeper than that logical brain. And I'm just doing everything right, and I still don't, right? And so once we got a handle on that actually probably is where our growth actually exponentially went. We got a certain level, but to get past that, it's not even mindset. It's really keeping a check on all the emotions that drive you and how you view the world. And it's just shedding. It's all shedding. It's shedding of all the lies that you have believed your whole life. And once you start to get down to what the truth is, you're like, my whole life is actually a lie. It's actually very freeing, because you realize now you can create whatever you want. You're actually no longer creating it based on these belief systems that have been embedded sort of deep within. And it is really a feeling-based a thing more than anything, because when you've experienced that feeling, you will see more of that feeling. And it's really, for us, it's just seeking, does that sit not just with our values filter, but with that feeling filter? Is that really, does our consciousness agree with that, and what we're meant to do on this planet agree with that? And if it doesn't sit there, we don't do it.
So do you know, was there something that kind of started you down that journey of kind of realization of those things? Or because I definitely got like pretty deep, and I'm not quite sure.
You know what? I think it was DeMartini was a huge thing.
That was probably he was probably our first coach.
Yeah, John. I went to the breakthrough experience with Dr. John DeMartini, and that blew my brain, because in my life everything was black or white. So this is right or wrong. This is good or bad. This is like boo boo doo. And you should do this, and what I think is right, and what other people's wrong. And then you basically, to summarize that, you find, we call it the 50 Shades of Grey. because
but in personal development.
In personal development, yeah.
This is a relationship show, just to clarify.
It is a relationship show.
But just to find out, like, that everybody has different values, and everybody has, and they're fine. They're just not yours. And when you judge people, you're just you're expecting them to have the same values as you, and everybody has different values. So that's just exhausting. And then it was huge for our relationship, just to understand her better. And I think she said, "Oh, thank God for DeMartini," about 20 times the first time I came back from the first seminar. But since we've done that, we've made a commitment that every year we go to one seminar each a year on our own by ourselves, and it's outside of chiropractic. So Brandy's done a lot of that.
So for me it was twofold. It was about 200 hours of neurology. So understanding the way the brain works, and understanding how little of our brain, not that we use, because we use a lot of it, but how little of our brain we can access in our wake time. So affirmations and goals and outcomes are all that conscious, logical part of the brain, which is a really small part of the brain. most of our behaviors run in our hard drive, which is the subconscious part of our brain. That is all formed before pretty much you're 12 and then reinforced for the next 20 years. Once you start to understand that, then you're like, wait a second. And then the biggest influencer for me is a friend of mine. His name is Dr. Joe Dispenza. And for me, doing his work was where that really was transformational, because we went from understanding it sort of from the external outside in to really understanding that most of us live our lives by emotions. We don't live our lives based on our, behaviors or logical thought. People actually make decisions based on emotions. And most of the emotions that run us in that subconscious brain are these altered human emotions that have this real strong addiction to something called stress and stress chemicals.
Yeah.
And so once you start to understand that, you start to look at where in my life am I actually producing those. And so a lot of the drama and strife and stress and things that we do, that's why affirmations are frustrating for people, because they'll put that stuff on their mirror and they'll read it every single day and nothing changes. And that's why people can work out and eat the right things and get adjusted and still be chronically ill, because that stress chemical, those stress hormones are the most powerful drug in the world, and they also break down the physiology, and it alters the way that we see the world. And you can't connect to your gut, which we all have. Nobody has. Yes, women are wired to sort of feel it more, but men and women, we innately have this intuition,
Your inner knower,
that lets us know, yay, that is what, but you can't tap into that when you are anxious and frustrated and angry and all those chemicals that we love to just reproduce in all of our situations. So his work for me was very powerful, and that's when we started, both of us started changing the way that we looked, and then Don started coaching with Tony Robbins' group, and he does a lot of the same kind of stuff. So we independently do it because that's a good thing for us, but like you said, it always themes back because we basically now sort of resonate at the same level, just the information is a little bit different.
Yeah. I think we've even found that just with actual, chiropractic seminars, and we're pretty early out, but him going to one and then, a couple weeks later, I went to one. When we came back from those weekends, a whole different energy about ourselves that then we feed off of. So whether it is, he has a great day with patients or a lunch and learn experience that's amazing. And my day wasn't, feeding off of each other's energy is definitely beneficial in that.
Totally. And you hope like you have that teeter-totter all the time, right? Like that's the ideal place to be. The one's not never on the top of the teeter-totter, and the other ones, because you probably know people like that, relationships like that. And if you have that unbalanced teeter-totter in the marriage or the relationship, that eventually that person's going to hop off the teeter-totter. It's not going to go well. That's ultimately the ideal, is that you have that sort of ebb and flow of that relationship. And like I said, it is a mechanical process. It is, I think building a really solid relationship is mechanical, and it's as mechanical as healing can be. It's as mechanical as chiropractic is in the beginning. But then eventually it becomes less mechanical, and it actually becomes more energetic. And then you hit in the pyramid of consciousness, you sort of rise up to the pyramid, to the upper levels. And it's quite freeing, actually, because you don't just logically think, I have all this power, but I don't understand why none of it's working, right? Then you get all the self-help memes, and you're like reading them all on Facebook, and like it's not working, which is very cool when you realize you just create all of it through your energy and your emotion. Then you just have 100% accountability for everything. And we live in that world today where I'm responsible for everything I do, and he's responsible for everything he does. And we're not responsible for one another, but then when we come together within that model, it works out really, really well.
One of my favorite quotes is from Jim Rohn, where he said, when he gets married, I said, I promise to look after me for you if you promise to look after you for me.
That's
good.
Super, super smart.
All right. So kind of reeling it back a little bit. What is your all's very favorite thing to do together? If you could have a weekend or a date night to go do anything, what would it be?
Golf.
Yeah.
Golf.
And that's one thing we were bad at this last year, is we didn't book enough time for golfing.
Yeah.
And but we love to golf.
We love to golf
that's
together.
What we like to do.
Yeah.
We only golfed three times this year.
Wow.
Oh, my word.
It doesn't help where we live either, which is like there's about like 8 weeks of golfing season. So we have to go.
Oh, come on, there's like 10.
That's what I was going to say. Come make a trip down here to the desert.
I know, right? And what's
in the
funny is
winter.
we've never even been there. It's how crazy is that? It's like a direct flight. As you know, all the Canadian snowbirds go there.
Yep.
Yes.
So they all go there for 6. All of our patients have now left and gone to Phoenix for the winter.
Yeah.
We've never been, and we always talk about going because we do love to golf. It's one.
Yeah, we just hit prime golfing season now, and we're
it's
prime
beautiful.
golfing till about May.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
May,
it's
June.
not too hot. See, I would
No, it's beautiful. It's sunny and probably low 80s right now.
I walked the dogs this morning at 6:30 and it was 54 degrees. I was freezing, like hoodie, sweatpants. Oh my gosh.
we walked the dog this morning at 6:30 this morning, and it was we're Celsius, -20 with about a foot of snow.
Oh my.
Oh no.
Like 10 below or something Fahrenheit.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I love the snow, but it's a vacation spot. Like if I want snow, I'm purposely going for snow. We're
the opposite. We go to the desert.
yeah, exactly.
We just live here just to put everything in perspective. So anytime we're anywhere nice, we appreciate it more than everybody else.
Exactly.
That's true. So I know, Don, you mentioned your book, and that was the Underdog Curse. Is that correct? Okay. Yes. And Brandi, you said you have one.
Oh yeah, you've got a book.
I don't have one. It's in the pipes.
It's in the pipe.
It's in the ether.
Oh, okay.
I'm trying to get her to work
it's
on
creating itself right now out there somewhere.
Okay.
Are we talking about that one yet, or?
No, we're not talking about mine.
Not talking about it yet? Okay.
To be continued.
Let's put a deadline on it to make her stressed out.
Oh, no. No.
Well, you got all the snow on the ground before it comes time to golf.
What else am I going to do?
But we talked about love languages, right?
Yeah, buy that book. Yeah, the 5 love languages. Awesome.
5 love languages.
Okay. Yeah. We'll definitely add those.
Well, was there anything else that you guys thought of as we kind of went through this that you'd like to circle back to or mention, or anything even completely off topic that you guys want to talk about?
I just think it's a lot of work, marriage. And it's a lot of work to have a business.
Yeah.
And I think I was just talking to a patient the other day who his whole dream was to have his own business because that's what he wanted. Because he thought once he had his own business, like everything would be better and he wouldn't get all mad at his boss and all that stuff. And now he has his business, and now he's like tied to his business. He said, I've been even more busy than I was before. And I had this fantasy about business that I thought it was going to be all, rainbows and unicorns and everything. And same thing happens sometimes with marriage too, that people think it's not going to be that much of a challenge. But the thing is that the best things in life are always after the biggest challenge, because anything you've done that's easy isn't really that rewarding because it's like not a big deal. But I just think, you just keep working on it, and we're still working on it.
Yeah.
So that's 18 years.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Those are good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. A guy. Good point.
Yes. Good job.
That was his love language.
Yeah, actually. And one other thing too that I'll just add in, and I just did a podcast with a chiropractor, Wayne Todd in Australia, and he had a really good tip for marriage. He had a couple that had been married for 48 years, and they got marriage counseling from a Catholic priest who was like 80 years old, like way, way back in the day. And he said, in marriage counseling, they only had 2 pieces of advice. And he came to the wife and he said, your job is to praise him. And he goes to the husband and said, your job is to listen to her. and he said, if you ever see any couples, and I've seen this in practice now after I did this interview a while ago, and if any people are having a relationship issue and you come up to the wife and say, when's the last time you praised him? And she's like, are you kidding me? He doesn't do anything. I'm never praising him. He's an idiot. And then you talk to the wife and say, have you ever, the husband, and said, have you ever listened to her? Like, have you ever sat down and listened to her? He goes, what are you talking about? She's nabbing all the time. I don't listen to anything she says. So those are some cool bits of advice I really liked from that I learned that I'll pass on to you guys.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, yep. 2 of what seems like the most simple ideas, praising and listening, but I mean, we're pretty brand new to this whole marriage thing, which is why it's awesome to talk to couples like you and just know that just keep trucking along. We're going to be fine.
Totally. It is complicated when you're in business together. It's but like it's neither is easy. In particular for us, for any small business, but in chiropractic, that's what we knew. It was not, it's a tough haul. It's a lot of work, and it's a lot of every day getting up and grinding it out and, telling people about something that they just don't know what it is. I mean, so every day you're doing the same thing. And then every day in your marriage, right, if you can kind of create the same consciousness that it's just, I think there's so much divorce for two reasons. I think people don't understand that they marry people with different values than what they have, and they're unable to communicate to each other in such a way that honors their values. And the second thing is that people are completely unconscious about the relationship. And so we think if we just meet somebody, we get married, we have a fairy tale relationship, it just stays like that. Yeah. And it doesn't stay like that. And then you add all the extra stressors of business and kids and all that kind of stuff. And, now you have the perfect storm for a relationship that's not going to make it. And so I think it's just your business and your marriage is really about how much consciousness and then how much work you put in. And so certainly we talk like we have it all figured out, but it's been an 18 grinded years out. And certainly we're at a point now where we can look back and go, oh yeah, that was worth it. At the time, it didn't feel like it was going to be worth it, but now we can say
we've been through a lot of
that
shit.
That was
fair enough.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I'm looking forward to our journey, and to share it with you guys later.
Yeah. So thank you guys for coming on and talking with us and sharing all your thoughts and ideas, and we really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you very much. That was awesome.
Absolutely.